October 6th, a packed courtroom sat in silence, waiting to hear Judge David Reich's sentence for Steve Johnson. Johnson had been the manager of Discontent, a Bismarck skate shop busted for selling synthetic drugs. A jury found Johnson and store owner Thomas Tepley guilty of similar synthetic drug charges. Tepley urged Judge Reich to consider Johnson's character when making his decision. He had worked with Steve for 12 years.
If not for me, at least for him, I would like you to consider what the defense is saying.
He asked the judge to consider the dozens of letters supporting his former store manager.
I have never, ever seen an outpouring like I've seen regarding Steve. I'm just flabbergasted.
Amanda Johnson is Steve's sister. She worked at Discontent for 3 years.
How the media portrayed Discontent was not at all what it actually was.
Discontent quickly gained popularity soon after it opened, especially with the younger crowd. The store would eventually change their lives.
Doesn't matter if it was nice out. I don't know, it was just like home there.
Steely Stiefel first rolled into Discontent when he was 10 years old. He was one of the many young regulars that first started skating there. Every kid and employee we talked to says there was one person in particular that made Discontent the second home it was for so many: Steve Johnson.
I could trust Steve with Kate. I could drop him off in the morning. He could stay all day with them, and I would have no fear or no worries about him even being him at his age.
I was just a little youngster then, but he'd always call me his little buddy, and he was super duper nice to me. Like, he took me under his wing.
Helped me with my homework. He always checked up on my grades.
Sam Sprincenatic had worked at Discontent too. He says he was more excited to work for Steve than at the store at all. He captured some of the last moments of Discontent and put them in a documentary. The story described what the store meant to the people that spent their time there.
Yes. Yeah, buddy.
I guess nobody knew it existed. I just kind of wanted to have it all for memories anyway, for all of us that it was a home for.
But soon, Discontent would close. New products started showing up on their shelves in 2011. They were so popular, police say it caused traffic problems in downtown Bismarck.
We're like, what is this stuff? It'd be a little Mylar package with a clown on it, or an animal, or a devil, or something like that. And we really didn't know how to respond as law enforcement.
The small, colorful packets were labeled as potpourri or incense. But there was a reason something that normally costs cents sold for more than $40 a package.
Shift officers were responding to a lot of calls on a daily basis where they'd go and find some kid or an adult going through a medical seizure, flopping around on the street, and they had just walked out of Discontent.
Police raided Discontent in June of 2012. They found 12,000 packages of synthetic drugs.
They're not controlled, they're not manufactured in careful scientific settings, and the people who make them don't care.
According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, synthetic drugs can be smoked or vaporized, and they have extreme mind-altering effects on users. But what's inside of them, you can never be sure of. Gordon Langang has been working in the ER for 20 years. He's seen the effects of synthetic drugs firsthand.
My first exposure to spice was a great big guy from Mandan. He was about 6'2", I suppose. And his wife called because he was literally running into the wall with his head. And why would you do that? And when he came to the emergency department, that behavior continued. He was bloodied. I mean, his face and head looked like hamburger, and he continued to do it.
The synthetic drug problem hit North Dakota quickly. Synthetic drug submissions to the state crime lab went from almost nothing in 2009 to nearly 1,500 by 2012. The problem prompted Stenjum to ask for an emergency rule to ban synthetic drugs. Then North Dakota passed 2 laws the following year designed to control them.
These guys are straight up drug pushers as far as I'm concerned.
Discontent closed in May of 2012.
I don't think there's any question that lives were saved.
Tepley and Johnson were each charged with 6 felony counts, including the distribution of those drugs. Their trial started in July of this year.
I'm a skateboarder. I preferred selling skateboard products over potpourri or pipes.
So you didn't like selling the potpourri, did you?
Potpourri or pipes.
Regardless of Johnson's intentions, a jury found him guilty of 3 counts. That leads us to the letters we told you about earlier. In the 85 days between the jury's guilty verdict and Johnson's sentencing, Judge Reich received 55 letters supporting Johnson. Those who read them got a look at the same man portrayed in Sprints and Addicts documentary.
He does anything to provide me to keep skateboarding. I see him as my brother.
They actually got to know Steve. Like, this wasn't his fault. Like it's just hard. Like, it's hard to explain.
The boys were just every night. They say their prayers and always mention, "Oh, pray for Steve, Dad."
Prayers took the form of T-shirts and Facebook pages too, all to show the judge and the community that Steve had too much to offer to put behind bars. But not everyone agrees.
Making these guys out to be folk heroes. There's a website out singing the praises of these guys. I don't understand that.
That brings us back to the same packed courtroom on October 6th. Reich sentenced Johnson to 2 years probation, no jail time, for charges that could have put him behind bars for 25 years.
It's where the perspective that you come from. From our perspective, the synthetic cannabinoids in this town we're paying a tremendous price socially for them, and Mr. Johnson was involved in their sale. We have to separate out the actions that we went to court for, and he was found guilty in front of a jury of his own peers with what everybody else sees.
I can see both sides on the argument. He's not like a drug dealer.
Johnson and his sister went home that night. The only thing that remains of Discontent, some graffiti on the back wall of a half-empty building.
Pass by there now and we'll look in there and it's empty. It's like I just want to rebuild it.
Steely says he'll see Johnson skating at Hillside Park from time to time.
He just gave me a lot of confidence, and he'd do anything to keep me skating.
So when you skateboard, you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it with your friends, you're doing it to get over fears, you're pushing yourself. That's what the drug is for you, you know?
The drug of skateboarding that the people who loved Discontent remember most.